Good afternoon, EXJW and JW community. This is the Oracle coming in for another edition of my vlogs. Today I was motivated to do this video because I actually came across a video yesterday and a video I think the week before that has really motivated me to sort of focus my advocacy on what I would like to do with my time when I do my YouTube videos. This won't be my only objective, but I do feel like I would feel more like I'm doing something productive if I had a few objectives in mind besides informing and advocating and empowering the XJW community. So my advocacy is being motivated by what I see happening to Jehovah Witnesses and ex-Jehovah Witnesses. And this is sort of the next conversation and a series of conversations that I have been talking about in my videos that have to do with the violation of human and civil rights that I believe is going on in the Jehovah Witness Organization. So today is going to be a little bit legal. I am going to cite some things and I'm going to refer to some things. I don't have a video stand yet for my phone, so I have a few documents that I have printed out and that I have on my iPad. So if I put my phone down or it seems a little shaky, I certainly apologize. I wish I was more I wish I had more technical stuff at home that I could use when I'm doing videos, but I don't at this time. But I just wanted to kind of put this disclaimer out here. I try to keep my phone as steady as possible as I'm referencing things. But if you could see the amount of things I have on my lap that I want to make sure I cover in this video, you would understand why I just said, let me just say this from the beginning. I might have to put my phone down to make sure that I stay on track of what I want to talk about today. So the catalyst for my video today came about because I watched a video yesterday, and I'm actually going to link the two videos that I'm directly referencing. There was a gentleman, I believe he's Canadian, and he has a video entitled "A Jehovah Witness Elder on Trial for Apostasy." I believe his name is Barine Pickett's. I hope I'm not butchering that too much. However, I watched a good portion of his video. Most people know my intro and my work schedule and all of the responsibilities that I have. So I try to, squash this in with everything else that I'm doing. But I had some free time, so I was watching his video. I wasn't able to complete it, but it really was very disturbing to me, and not him, but what happened to him. He was able to videotape going into a judicial hearing, and I'm glad that he refused to go into it, but there were approximately 6 elders or brothers, ministerial servants or elders that had closed off the parking lot, so they wouldn't even let him park in the parking lot. They had called a police officer to circle the Kingdom Hall, and at every turn that this man was walking, they had people standing at the door, they had people standing at the parking lot, and then there were 3 people that were standing at the door. And I actually, I was so incensed by the treatment of this man that I actually talked to my husband about it, because and I'm going to talk a little bit about his credentials and mine, but I just told him how disturbed I was to watch this, because this man, hadn't hurt anybody. He wasn't charged with a crime of violence or drugs or sexual abuse of any type. Yet, the way that this man was treated by a supposed Christian organization was reprehensible. And the gross violations of human and civil rights was abominable. And I cannot stay silent and see people persecuted in the manner that they're persecuted. This man is really being treated like the worst person walking on the face of the earth. And I want to mention that the hypocrisy is that there are sexual predators in the Jehovah Witness organization that have been disfellowshipped or not disfellowshipped. They have listened to a case. They decided that there wasn't enough evidence because of a two witness rule, and they have allowed these people to stay in congregations without notifying the members. And in any of these cases, were they treated like this brother was, or a former brother? It was ridiculous. It was so horrible. And the human rights violations and the civil rights violations, and he actually did get an attorney, and it annoyed me so much that it motivated me to say, you know what, I actually need to do something about this. I need to make a video, and I need to urge anyone that comes across this video to share this video, and to please implore people to talk to this man. I believe that a class action suit is what's needed at this time, and I'm just going to put it out there. I'm going to make my case as I continue, but I really actually took some time for this situation. I made some time this morning. I had to write it out. I had to outline exactly what it is that I wanted to come to the community with. And it really, really was a catalyst for this particular video and another video that I came across. So the second video that I came across was by a person who posts under Witness for Jesus. She's a Christian. She's not a Jehovah Witness anymore, or she was studied as a Jehovah Witness, but she actually was posting a video or posting a recording of a woman who was charged with apostasy and disfellowship. And the woman actually was accused of handing out leaflets, but she was never allowed to defend herself. They basically just violated every human and civil rights that is owed to any human being. It was so reprehensible that I think the consensus of Jehovah Witnesses is that something has to be done. And I'm gonna really lay out the purpose and sort of where I'm going with this, because this is really a legal matter at this time. And I want to talk about what is my goal, what should be the goal of the Jehovah Witnesses and ex-Jehovah Witnesses that choose to watch this video. And you'll see that probably over a year ago, I actually talked about human rights violations of the Jehovah Witnesses. And probably my video, not the last one I did, but the one before, I talked about violation of due process. But I want to get into it a little bit further, because again, even after my video, people have reached out to me and they've told me about people that were accused of something. They were accused of something. That's it. And the next thing they know, they're disfellowshipped. They're not notified. They're not allowed to defend themselves. There's no letter, there's no hearing, there's no appeal process. And all the things that I'm actually talking about is called arbitration. So there's a problem here because what's happening, and I want to make this very, very clear, is the Jehovah Witness Organization is now becoming a dictatorship to the point where they're being a judge, a jury, and an executioner. So really, there is no reason for you to show up to a judicial meeting because most of the time, I mean, and I'm saying 99% of the time, they've already made a decision without your input. And there's a problem there because your human rights, the rights that you are guaranteed, is that you are allowed an arbitration process. But I want to talk about some of the things that I'm going to reference because I need to get a little bit deeper in this conversation. I need to talk about what is out there for human beings to have for you so that your rights are not violated by any institution, any government, or any organization. So we're going to look at the Constitution of the United States. I am from the United States. I live in the United States. I know there are people that are going to watch this video that are in the United States. However, you should have something similar to the Constitution. You should have some type of legal document that is a guarantee for how all citizens of your country should be treated. I am going to also talk about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And this is an international document. This is an international document that binds all of the members of the United Nations. And this is really talking about human rights violations. So I'm going to actually show you because I did have a conversation with my husband, and I'm going to talk a little bit about his credentials and my credentials, but it doesn't matter. You don't have to have any credentials in law to advocate for yourself. You can go out and you can read these things. But my husband is an educator, and one of the things that he specializes in is U.S. government. So when I'm going to talk about things that have to do with the government, I will run it past him and I will ask him questions because I want to make sure that I'm on track. Now, he is not a Jehovah Witness. He has never been a Jehovah Witness. My background is undergrad, human rights, psychology, philosophy, human behavior. I did minors in journalism. I also did a degree in social science. And the graduate level, in my graduate degrees, I studied law as one of them. I have a graduate certificate, which is a specialization in criminal justice / law. And so that is my criteria. I am not an attorney. I want people to take the things that I am saying and reach out to an attorney. The person, Barini Pickett, actually has an attorney, and he actually has a PDF of the letter that he sent to the Watchtower and Tract and Bible Society. I think it was fantastic that he did that because we actually need to have a conversation. We need to have a conversation, and I'm going to start that conversation. He's going to start that conversation. Witness for Jesus is going to start this conversation. It doesn't matter if you're atheist, Muslim, if you are agnostic. I am not talking about what your belief is, whether you're a Jehovah Witness, but you have a problem with procedures and processes and things like that. This is for everyone. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is important. The Constitution of the United States is important because this is case law. The issues or the concerns about the Constitution specifically, and this is something that my husband actually helped me with, which I kind of already knew, is that the Constitution covers federal and state government. And when you're dealing with religious organizations, it's you can use it as a reference, but it's not always 100% that this is what this organization has to follow 100%. But you can use it when you are referencing violations and you are using this as case law. So I did a little bit of research yesterday, and I did a little bit of research because I was curious, has any religious organizations had any cases that people were complaining or going to the courts because they felt that due process was violated. And I came across some case law. So any attorneys out there that have your paralegals or legal clerks, there are some cases out there that have to do with the Amish community, the Quakers. So I did see some cases when I looked yesterday. It's not clear cut, and it's not going to be clear cut. So I actually believe that this Jehovah Witness situation that I'm going to talk about in more detail is something where you can set some precedents for things that are going on in the Jehovah Witness organization, because I personally believe, and I've talked with some people that are qualified, including people that actually that do have JDs, that there is some huge violations that are being done. And it's so gross that I feel like we need to have a conversation about how we can actually make some changes. So before I get into talking about the Constitution and reading some articles from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, I do want to talk about a few things. So one of the things that my husband asked me is, what is your goal? What is your goal? He and I were having this conversation, so I want to actually give a big kudos to him because he helped me to kind of stay on track. And I said, well, my goal is to change the processes and procedures that are done in the organization. My goal when I started doing my videos was to talk about my own life and talk about the things that have happened and how they have affected me, to talk about the problems that I have with shunning, the problems that I have with the violations that I see going on. My big advocacy is the sexual abuse that is taken and just destroyed so many families, including my own, and talk about just all of the different things and aspects that I think would help the EXJW and even the JW community. My goal has never been to destroy the organization. That has not been my goal. That will never be my goal, because I believe that people have a right to believe whatever they want to believe. And I believe that people are going to follow this organization regardless of what you do and say. And people that are listening to this, come on, you know it. There's people that just have cognitive dissonance. They don't care what you say. They don't care what evidence you have. They're just going to believe it. And that's not the fight. That's not the fight for me. And that shouldn't be the fight for any of us. I don't even think that they'll ever get rid of excommunication. I think they may change it, but that is not the goal. My particular goal, my reason for making this video, and it is going to be entitled How Jehovah Witness Organization Violates Human and Civil Rights, is that I believe that they need to change their policy, they need to change their procedures, and they need to change their processes. So that's my first goal. My second goal is that they should give restitution restitution should be a part of any arbitration process. It should be reasonable, and they should be able to, whatever restitution is done, they should give it directly to the claimant. At the moment, I have never heard of any Jehovah Witness organization making a change in I made an error, or this person actually was wronged, or we made a mistake. I have never and correct me in the comments, have you ever heard of the Jehovah Witnesses actually going in front of the organization and admitting that, and I'm not talking about New Light, I'm talking about disfellowshipping people and it's been wrong, shunning people, and you shun people for the wrong reason, or you shun people because you had wrong information. There's a lot of people that have been disfellowshipped because of the word of one person. And in all the cases that I talked about, none of the people, and I'm talking about Berean Pickets, I'm talking about Witness for Jesus, and I don't know the woman's name, but no person was allowed a defense. They weren't allowed to have a representative there to speak on their behalf. So you go into a judicial meeting, and Pickett's, by the way, you recorded that phone call for an appeals, and he absolutely said it was a judicial meeting. I want you to make sure you mention that to your attorney, because when you were talking to these people in the parking lot or the front of the Kingdom Hall, they tried to say that it was a shepherding process. It's not a shepherding process. You're actually being tried. It is a judicial hearing. And if you're going to go before a judicial hearing, then you are entitled to representation. And I'm going to get into this in a minute. So the goal should literally be the process, procedures, and policy that need to be updated. But if you go back and watch my due process video, again, I have to thank my husband for this. He said, what is the process of the Jehovah Witnesses when it comes to matters of disfellowshipping, disassociation of inactive members? And, I said, hey, listen, that was the first thing that I said. And I'm going to say it again. They have a whole legal department at the Watchtower, Tract, and Bible Society. If I was representing anyone, I would say, please send me a copy of your procedures for these things. And they must have a copy of it. So the first thing is, what is your written policy on these particular things? My second thing is that, do the members know that when they are baptized, that they are bound by these policies? And then 3, are they aware of that? Because you are a member of an organization, and there are policies that govern your membership. And that means that this organization is required to notify its members of the policies that they are to adhere to. If you are being forced to follow policies that you're not aware of, then that is a violation of your human rights. I want to just go for a minute before I go into some of the legal documents, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read several sections that I think are important. I talked about when I went in for my judicial meeting. When I went in for my judicial meeting, I was only 17 years old, and I'm a female. And I went in, and there were 3 older men that questioned me. And I was horrified by the incident. I was horrified and I was traumatized by it because I wasn't an adult yet. And they asked me some very inappropriate sexual questions. And I felt very, very uncomfortable. And I felt violated. And I'm being very honest. And again, I've said this in multiple videos, but let me be clear. They had already told me they were not going to disfellowship me for that. They told me that they felt that I was, that I was sorry. I talked about sort of the political part of it. My grandfather was best friends with the head of the judicial committee. And he was like, I really think we're going to put you on reproof, but we need you to come back to the Kingdom Hall. And then the second part of that was, we need you to come back to the Kingdom Hall. We need you to commit to studying with one of the sisters, da da da. They lost me with the judicial meeting. I mean, I wasn't going to be a witness anyway. I had told my parents, I had told my grandparents months and months before that I did not agree with this religion. But I had no idea that there was a judicial process the way that I was required to adhere. And when I went in for it, I was absolutely and totally shocked. And I was like, I will never be a part of an organization that does something like that. It was traumatic for me. I felt like I was on trial. I thought the way that this judicial meeting was held, I literally felt like I had committed a gross crime and not a sin. And it just was just totally inappropriate to me. And I said I would never be a part of an organization that does this to a 17-year-old young girl. And I would never put my children through that. And it would never occur to me to put that through anybody else that I loved. Because we do make mistakes. We do sin. We do make mistakes. But one of the things that my partner and I were talking about, because he's not Christian, but he is another belief, and he was like, that is really weird. He's like, because, no matter what belief that you are, the idea that you have of God is that he is merciful, he is loving, he is compassionate. He was like, the way that they circled that man, he was like, that they're not of God. I was like, I know. And that's our case, is that the way that the Jehovah Witness Organization is handling cases of free thinkers or people that just don't want to be a Jehovah Witness anymore is Gestapo. It's a dictatorship. It's unloving. It's not compassionate. You mean to tell me that you blocked off the parking lot and you wouldn't even let this man park his car? What other religious organization does that? And I'm just going to go even further. What difference did it make? You mean he can't even park his car in your parking lot? This man just has a difference of opinion. I think it's ridiculous that this man is on trial. He hasn't even been to the Kingdom Hall in 4 years. So they're going out of their way to persecute an inactive member because he's actually speaking out about human rights violations in your organization. So you're persecuting him like he actually set fire to your Kingdom Hall. You have police circling the building. To me, it's absolutely insane. And like I said, it is a gross violation of the person's human rights. So now I wanna talk about the meat of this situation. I want to talk about, why I think it's important that we have this conversation and what laws do we have in place. So the first thing I'm going to do, and again, I mentioned, please, I'm going to apologize for a shaky video, but the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about due process again. And this time we're going to go a little bit further than it. So what is due process? Due process is a legal requirement that the state must respect all legal rights that are owed to a person. Due process balances the power of the law of the land and protects the individual person from it. So what does the Constitution say about due process? So you're going to find references to due process in the 5th and the 14th Amendment. And the Constitution states that each person is entitled to due process. And that due process deals with the administration of justice, and that due process causes acts to be due process is a safeguard for acts so that there is no arbitrary denial of life, liberty, or property by the government outside the sanction of law. So as I mentioned earlier, this is really more of a reference. Just because you're in a religious organization does not mean that they can violate due process. A citizen is still entitled to laws of the land, and their inherent due process should not be violated. So as I said, when we're talking about the Constitution and due process, this is more about federal and state. However, in cases where a religion has been charged with violating due process, and I found some case law for the Amish and the Quakers and such, there was a judgment of that there was something valid in that. So they did use the Constitution as a basis. But there is another document that is even more important when we're talking about religion and we're talking about how people should be treated, what human rights are entitled of any human being, regardless of where they live in the world, and what are those civil rights? What are those human rights? And so that's why I think the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is an important document to reference. It's a very important document to reference as we talk about what human rights violations is the Jehovah Witness Organization violating chapter and verse. Because I think that this is an international issue. This is an international issue because, as I mentioned before, the majority of Jehovah Witnesses are not in the United States. And there is a big problem with a fact that the organization is its central location, the head of it, the headquarters is in the United States, and they have people all over the country. The country, but also all over the world that are being affected by these gross human and civil rights violations. So I want to talk a little bit about the violations that I am charging that the Jehovah Witness Organization is guilty of. And I am going to go with Articles 9 and 10 and 18 and 19. So, for those of you that don't know what the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is, it's a document that was drafted by representatives of all of the regions of the world, and it was ratified and proclaimed by the United Nations in 1948. And it sets out for the first time fundamental human rights to be universally protected. And it has been translated into 500 languages. So again, this organization is violating your human rights. How do I know that? There is a document that has been ratified by just about every single country and nation on the planet. And this is something that actually you can point to and you can use as a case. So let's start with Article 9. And again, if you've watched my previous video, this is not the first time that you'll be hearing this. But Article 9 says that no one shall be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. Is that happening in the Jehovah Witness Organization? That happened with quite a few people. You're being exiled. You're not even being allowed to defend yourself against any accusation. You're being treated like you are a leper. This next one is sort of a carry on from number 9. Everyone is entitled in full equality to a fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal, and the determination of his rights and obligations of any criminal charges against him. And I'm going to say her because they should change this because it's, should include men and women. But when you hear him, it's also talking about women. But this is a very important thing. A fair and public hearing. Is someone actually having a fair and public hearing when you go to a judicial meeting by Jehovah Witnesses? They're not. If you, and I'm glad that people are actually starting to tape them, because then they can't lie. See, if it's only you, so a woman, there's been several comments of people where they're like, my son was disfellowshipped on the words of one person. They didn't call a meeting. They didn't notify my son that he was disfellowshipped. One person who could be lying. You don't even get it. Do I get a chance to actually go and defend myself against an accusation? Do I have someone that represents me? So I just go in, somebody's accused me of something. You actually believe these people. I don't get a chance to go in. I don't get a meeting. I don't get a chance to defend myself. I have no representation. This is happening all over the world with Jehovah Witnesses. Jehovah Witnesses are disfellowshipping people. They're excommunicating people without a fair and impartial hearing. So they are 100% violating Article 10 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I am going to make sure that that changes. Every single person that is accused of anything in this organization deserves representation. They deserve to be notified, and they deserve a right to be heard, which means that they deserve a right to defend themselves. And you can see from the manner in which this is carried out that if every single time you are brought into a judicial meeting and every single time a person is disfellowshipped, then there is no reason for you to go to the meeting because they have already made up their mind what they're going to do. And actually, when you hear the video from the Jehovah Witness elder on trial for apostasy, the only thing that they wanted from that appeals meeting was repentance. They didn't care about his defense. They didn't care if he had an attorney. They didn't care if he was able to mitigate or explain away any of the accusations. This is judge, jury, and executioner. This is a dictatorship. This is not of God. This is not a loving organization. This is an organization that takes away your human rights when you get baptized, and you need to know what you are getting involved in. Because you need to know that a group of people, a group of men, can violate your human rights just based on the words of somebody else. The problem is that they don't use that same tactic when somebody has been accused of sexual abuse. And that is ridiculous. So now we're going to go to Article 18 and 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article 18 states, everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom, either alone or in a community with others and in public or private, to manifest his religion or beliefs in teachings, practice, worship, and observance. So everyone has the right to freedom of thought, and everyone has the right to their own beliefs. And they have a right to change that belief without being persecuted. So someone that was a Jehovah Witness can decide that they don't want to be a Jehovah Witness. They should not be persecuted for that. That is what they're doing to people, is persecuting them for deciding that they don't want to be a Jehovah Witness. Article 19 says that everyone has the right of freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. Now let's talk about that for a minute, because Jehovah Witnesses are actually attacking people on YouTube, on Facebook, for expressing their thoughts and their ideas. And I'm telling you, this is not a loving organization. This organization is not of God. I can't personally believe how far this organization has fallen and how grossly they are violating human rights and civil rights. And it has to stop. You cannot just arbitrarily disfellowship people without allowing them to have a defense. And you cannot disfellowship people without following your own policies and procedures and process. The only reason that these brothers are doing that is because they think that Jehovah Witnesses are so scared of being excommunicated that they are not going to fight for their rights. My number one question is, what is the written policies and procedures of the Watchtower and Tract Society when it comes to holding judicial meetings, when it comes to notification of members of being excommunicated? What is their arbitration procedures and policies? Because they are violating. I can almost guarantee you that they are violating them, because no religious organization, especially the Watchtower, Tract, and Bible Society, is going to have policy that could easily be sued. They're not going to have written policy, but see, here's the problem. They're not showing that policy. They are not showing that policy to the members. You can't ask any questions. How dare you? I actually can ask questions. I can defend myself. This is not a shepherding meeting. This is actually a judicial meeting. And if you're going to have a judicial meeting, I need to have representation here. See, you're signing up for people to violate your human rights. And here's the problem why I want active Jehovah Witnesses to pay attention. You think that this doesn't concern you, but it will. What if somebody in your congregation decides that they don't like you? I mean, listen, I'm a third generation ex-Jehovah Witness. I have presiding elder grandfather who was a pedophile, but I knew all the stuff. My uncle is, I think he's a circuit overseer now. I've heard stuff so much that I could write a book just on the stuff that goes on in the congregation. So people don't like each other sometimes in the congregations. People tell lies on each other in the congregation. Right now, people are being disfellowshipped because of the words of someone else that you can't confront them. You need two witnesses in order to solidify that there's been sexual abuse, but you'll disfellowship someone on the words of one person when it comes to apostasy. Even if you don't have the evidence, where's evidence? If I've been accused of something, you need to present that evidence in front of me. If you're going to excommunicate me so that I am shunned by my family and friends, then you actually need to come with all of your information. I need to be able to defend myself against anything that you accuse me of. And if you reach an agreement that I disagree with, then you need to allow me to be able to appeal those decisions. And you need to be able to have someone that is fair and impartial that is going to represent me. If the organization is not allowing those things to happen, then they are violating your human rights. And these are human rights that have been outlined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There is documentation, there is legal documentation, there's binding case law that will help this organization change the way that it is treating its members, because today they are violating human rights. They have completely lost all of the integrity that I actually, even though I never wanted to be in this organization again, and I'm finding out things about it, I actually never believed that they would go this low. I'm actually appalled to see them just, again, I started looking at this when I started hearing all of these stories of people that are being disfellowshipped. They don't even know they're being disfellowshipped. Like, you don't even get a letter. You don't get an outline of the process and procedures. And my biggest question, again, going back to what my husband asked me, what is the policy and procedures of this organization? When you become a member, are you aware of these policy and procedures? Are you consenting to these policy and procedures when you become a member? Because if you're not, then we have a bigger problem here. And that is really the crux of what I wanted to talk about today. So what would I like to see happen? I made a list. I checked it twice. No, honestly, I made a list because I've reached a point where we actually need to do something, and I'm making a call to every single ex-Jehovah Witness that has the YouTube video that we all need to come together, whatever difference of opinion or issue that you have with another person's delivery. We are all in this together, and we have to empower. If our activism is really about empowerment and enlightenment and helping those that are still in and changing things that have happened for those that have been kicked out or left on their own terms, then we actually need to come together for this, because this is a violation that is happening across the board. And I honestly, I have sort of a vision of where I think this is going, because I think too many people are following where I'm going, which is these people are losing control. This organization is losing control. This is not the organization that I knew. And when I was in the organization, I didn't know some of the things, but to see where it's going today, it's atrocious that the violations are being done. But here's the things that I would like to see changed in the Jehovah Witness Organization. And I would like to see, in one form or fashion, added to a class action lawsuit. But for people that have individual problems that like the person that I referenced when I first started video, which is the Jehovah Witness elder that was put on trial for apostasy, be clear in your legal defense. You want the opinion changed because your human rights were violated, your civil rights were violated. You were not given a chance to have a defense. You were not allowed to face your accuser. You were not allowed to have representation. They made a decision and you weren't even allowed to see what it was that they were accusing you of. Those are human rights violations. So here's a list of things that I would like to see as an outcome. Number one, every member is fully aware and notified of the process and policy of the Jehovah Witnesses when they join, and that they are allowed to either consent to it or not, and not be persecuted if they decide that they don't want to consent to these policy and procedures. Because there's a lot of persecution that goes on for people simply expressing their freedom of thought, which is not right. Anytime, and this is sort of like 1A, any person that is brought into a judicial meeting should have those policies that is a part of the meeting. It should be readily available. So before you go into a judicial meeting, before they get into whatever you've been accused of, those policies should be available for the accused. And they should know what their rights are. That does not happen, and that needs to change. Number two, members should have a right to arbitration. And that's really a carry-on from 1 and 1A, meaning you need to have an appeals process. You need to have a time in which you can get evidence for whatever you're being accused of. So they're saying, you know, I went out and I stole money from a store. Actually, no, I didn't. It was the person that I was with. It wasn't me. And I actually turned that person into the police. Now, if I went into a judicial meeting and they were like, we heard from Sister Small that you were arrested. No, actually, I wasn't arrested. No, but that's not what we heard from Sister Small. So we met and we're going to disfellowship you. Well, are you going to let me go get evidence that I actually wasn't the person that was, you know, like, what is this going on here? Is it all only about what you think or what you've heard? Or do I have a chance to defend myself? And do I have a chance to show you that actually what you believe is incorrect? Arbitration. There should be an arbitration process or policy for every member. It should not be that Jehovah Witnesses, the judicial meeting is a judge, jury, and executioner. That is a gross violation of human rights. My next one is this is about facing the accuser. So again, 2, 3 is pretty much the same, but all members should receive in writing and be able to face the accuser or any entity that has brought something against them, and they should have it in writing and they should be able to face their accuser. So in a lot of the cases, people are being accused of things, they're being disfellowshipped for things. No one gives anybody anything in writing. You're not notified in writing. You're told, we heard that you did X, Y, and Z. but no one is allowed, no one is, well, who was it? Never mind, we're handling that. That's a human rights violation. If I'm going to be accused of something, and there was a time when I was like, you don't actually need to have it in writing, but actually you do. You actually do. If you are mimicking a judicial hearing, when you use things like judicial, you're following a constitution. So then I need to have due process. And this is what I mean. This is case law. The Constitution is really about federal and state government, but there's a precedent out there because this has come up. And so they're going to look at how the laws of the land are made and how it affects the organizations, religious organizations. And this will be referenced. And these are things that attorneys can reference. See, what the organization banks on, because they have $1 billion. Let's be clear, they have billions of dollars. And they bank on the fact that they can exploit their members, they can deny rights, and that no person is going to do anything for themselves because they don't have the money, they don't have the bandwidth, and they're very scared of being shunned. So this is control, but I think they are overplaying their hand because too many people are going through this. So you need it in writing. You need to be able to face your accuser. They cannot go in any congregation and make a statement about excommunication until you have completed your arbitration process. This next one is actually really important to me because I feel very strongly about this. I feel like members should always have a neutral third party to represent them. And I have some sub bullets to that, but going in, if you look at the videos, and it's not just one, if you look at videos where people have gone in for a judicial meeting, there's 3 or 4 people. Sometimes they do tactics to intimidate you. You go in, there's 2 people at the door. You walk into the door, there's another 2 people. You walk into a room, there's another 3 people. And you're not allowed to have anybody there for you. There's nobody there for your representation. There's nobody there for as a defense. It's all to attack you and bring you down. And again, outside people are starting to wake up. How is that a loving organization? Let's just say you're being accused of something and you're very sorry for it. I did it, but I was wrong. I made a mistake. The way that they go about having these judicial meetings is tactical, it's tyrannical, and it is completely wrong. You need to have somebody there to represent you. This second part is really important to me because I'm a woman. Women should always have another woman present for all accusations that involve anything that has to do with anything sexual in nature. I'll just say it that way. When I went in, a 17-year-old, and it was talking about fornication, I felt violated because there were 3 men in there asking me prying sexual questions. I thought it was inappropriate. I would have never signed up for this had I known that when I got baptized that I was allowing men to judge me, and I had no woman in there to defend me. I had no one there as a neutral third party. I had no one there to me, it was just very disturbing. So I don't believe that any woman should go into a room full of men that they're going to ask you prying sexual questions and you don't have another woman there that's going to be there to support you. The next one is sort of a caveat or sort of a carry on to that one. Excuse me. No children should meet with any judicial committee without a parent or guardian. Across the board, anyone under 18 should not be meeting with a group of men without their parent or guardian. I don't think it's correct. I I actually, and I'm not going to put this in the policy and procedures that I want changed, but I will say that I don't think anyone under 18 should get baptized. When I heard, I don't know if it was a video or someone that I knew that was an EXJW, but there was a 9-year-old girl that had gotten baptized, and at 11 years old, 10 or 11 years old, they were having some issues with a step parent. And the step parent went to the brothers, and the 11-year-old got disfellowship. An 11-year-old gets disfellowshipped and they get shunned by their family. Are you absolute kidding me? Shunning should not be done to children under 18. I think it's wrong, and baptism shouldn't even be done. My last one also is another caveat or sort of a carry-on. No child under 18 should be interrogated by a judicial committee regarding sexual child abuse without their parent and a neutral third party. Now, the fact that this organization is putting children in a judicial meeting without their parents, without a neutral third party, is absolutely reprehensible. So if you look at all of the things that I think I listed, and I had to think long and hard about it, it really goes down to the arbitration process. It goes down policy that every member should be aware of, and they should have a written consent that they're aware of it. They should also, before they begin any judicial meeting, which is an arbitration process, that they have the policies of the organization readily available. Because it can't just be that people are being judged, tried, and executed, whether it's, theoretically executed or not. They have a right to defend themselves. They have a right to arbitration. And when you think about the Declaration of Human Rights and why it was so important for it to be ratified by the United Nations, is because there were violations going on across countries. And in my opinion, the Jehovah Witness Organization needs to be held accountable. They need to do better. And we as ex-Jehovah Witnesses, as activists, need to hold this organization accountable. We need to force them to change. So again, what is my goal? What was my goal? My goal was to have a conversation with the EXJW community, but also Jehovah Witnesses. I want people that are Jehovah Witnesses. I want people that are interested in joining this organization to be aware that when you are in this organization, when it's good, it's great. You better hope that nothing happens where somebody doesn't like you, or you make a mistake, or you actually decide to change your mind. Because when those things happen, there is a good chance that your human rights will be violated. And that should not occur. I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm not saying you should be Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, or atheist or anything like that. That is your own path. But no matter what you belong to, you deserve to have certain things available to you. You deserve certain rights, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And that was my reason for the video today. I will be doing more on this, but I really needed to take some time today, and I needed to talk to the audience, and I need to talk to people about why this is important. Once I put my videos together, I will be adding links for the videos that I referenced. Again, the Jehovah Witness Organization, and I'm going to be clear, the Watchtower, Tract, and Bible Society needs to change their policies. What is the goal? The goal is for people that are in the organization to be free. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day, and we will talk soon.